because we do coaching, right? So we see different marriages, and sometimes, oh, we're going to start over. We're not starting over. Hi, welcome. We've been having technological problems.
So if you're watching this later, you're coming into the middle of our discussion.
Yeah, we're talking about anger and forgiveness. Okay, so talking about how anger can become our ally and not the enemy of love. Okay, so if you have a lot of anger in your marriage, maybe you feel a lot of anger and you know your spouse does, this is not so bad. This can be healed. Your marriage can be good. Like you don't have to always be angry, okay? Because we're going to be talking about how we get to healing from this constant or kind of this undercurrent or this
low grade anger.
Yeah, low grade anger that's just there all the time.
Slow burn.
Yeah. So and again, this is the book. It's Love and Anger in Marriage by David Mace. Okay, is mostly what we're using, but we're also using some stuff from the maritalhealing.com. So you can go there, really good sources on anger in marriage. The angry spouse especially fits for this one. So you can go there and you'll get some really good information. Okay, so so we want to get into the very practicality of, okay, how? Okay, like if you've got a lot of anger or even a little bit of anger, we don't have to see anger as a threat, and it certainly does not have to ruin your marriage. But again, for those of you who are just coming in late or are watching this video instead of live, it's that his major thesis in this book is that in every marriage, the two dynamic forces are love, which seeks to draw the couple together, and anger, which tends to drive them apart. Okay, so they're both there. They're there all the time from beginning to end, but that anger can, yes, it can certainly take us in a wrong direction depending on how we deal with it, but it also can bring us to deeper intimacy. And that's what we're going to be talking about. Okay, so I'll try and finish this paragraph. So anger, becomes the ally and not the enemy of love, continuing to guide the couple through the life cycle by calling for new adjustments in order to maintain and deepen their intimacy. Meanwhile, as love matures and becomes less and less possessive, it takes over some of the earlier roles of anger by freeing the couple from the danger of overdependence on each other. Couples in a state of immature love are often fiercely jealous and overprotective, whereas mature couples encourage individual freedom and development and take joy and pride in each other's separate achievements. Finally, love develops the strength to grant complete freedom based on complete trust that it will not be abused or violated. Just teens more. Okay, so independence and interdependence come into perfect balance with love as a sustaining force, and the fine-tuning of the relationship is still being promoted by the gentle prodding of anger. So we can't expect anger to completely disappear because it's there for a purpose and it can help us. Okay, but we all know that it can be destructive. So we talked a little bit the last couple of weeks too. Do you want to just make a couple of points about maybe not? Paul didn't have enough time to prepare.
I was grading papers today.
Yeah, we're teaching a class. Actually, it's been a good class. It's been at least we think it's good. Maybe the students don't. But for the seminarians and some Masters of Religious Education people at Newman Theological College. And it's actually a really good book we've been reading. But just a few things. There's so many different ways we could go. Let's stick with let's not flit about too much. That's one of my problems. That's why I lean on Paul sometimes. Let's stick with what we were just talking about. Okay, so let's say you've got a big anger issue in your marriage and you're both angry a lot and it's just been that way and it doesn't feel good. Let's just go with that kind of scenario. You don't want to divorce. You don't think you're not planning on divorcing, but you would sure like it a lot if you weren't constantly angry. That's the scenario. Okay, so one of the first things that we need to do is recognize that anger in and of itself is not awful. It can be, again, we talked about last time about how it can be a sin. It can actually, how do I explain it?
Well, when it becomes self-serving, it can become sinful. I mean, our anger is just an emotion. It's what we do with it that counts. And so if we just, vent it, if we let it escalate, if we, treat our beloved rudely and shout and so forth, then it does become sinful. But if we let our anger guide us to what the underlying issue is, then it can bring more intimacy, because anger is always a secondary issue. I mean, it's a secondary emotion.
Yeah.
So there's underlying the anger, there's sometimes hurt, or there's sometimes fear, right? And so what are we hurt about, or what are we fearful about? And so what's putting us into anger?
So I'm going back to the book again, where they're talking about, okay, dealing with a marriage in crisis, like one that's where both people are quite angry. Okay, so again, when that is the situation, well, they talk about the character, the Chinese character for the word crisis is a combination of these two separate characters, which means danger and opportunity. So that's what anger is. You've got it can be dangerous, but can also be an opportunity, right? So mostly the gist of what I'm going to be reading is, or not reading, but kind of laying out for you from this pattern, which is a very good one, is that we do need to learn from our anger, and we need to set aside some time and be intentional about dealing with anger. And the first thing that we need to do is not store it up. So he talks about he doesn't use trick. Oh, he talks about pinch. So like, let's say I just say something in front, like we're with friends, and I just kind of do just a little one, but a little bit of a put down to Paul.
A little pinch.
And he feels it. It's kind of like, ow, right? It's not like horrible. It's not horrible, but it's still like, well, that was, it was rude, or it wasn't kind.
Or embarrassing.
Or a little bit embarrassing or something. So, okay. So right there, I mean, probably in front of friends, you're not going to say, ow, that hurt, but and you don't have to say ow, but the rule that they make in this book is that within 24 hours, you should deal with that. Like sometimes it isn't like if you might be quite mad and right at the moment, but whether it's a little pinch and kind of you think, oh, it's not a big deal, I'll just let it go, which, maybe once you're mature, your love is mature, maybe you can just do that. But a lot of times what happens if you just let even the little things go, they build, right? They build. So the suggestion here is that when there's a little pinch, you deal with it, and you don't let stuff stack up, right? Because then all of a sudden you've got like 100 pinches and you're like really steamed.
You're black and blue.
Yeah. So that's the kind of the main gist, but there's a few things in here that we want to talk about. So one thing is we need to be willing to set aside some time to deal with it. And, sometimes it's even hard to, I mean, we're all busy, and sometimes it's even hard just to say, like, let's sit down and talk about this. And especially if you think, well, it's not really that big a deal. I mean, just like sometimes when you should be disciplining your kid because they did something wrong, and you think, oh, well, it's not that big a deal, I'll just let it go.
I'm too tired to deal with it.
Right. And so then you end up with a bigger problem. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So it says far too many marriages degenerate from bad to worse just because the couples concerned don't make time to clear up issues as they develop. Okay. So, but a little later says that the sure signal that a repair may be needed is that one partner or both develop sustained anger. So that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about, like, it's not just one of you, you're probably both kind of living in this state of anger. And we've seen several couples.
Or irritability.
Sorry, I'm just a bit warmish. I'm going to just take off my jacket. Okay, so if you've got some sustained anger, it's just there almost all the time. Okay, then it needs to be dealt with. Okay, here we go. Okay, the sure signal repair is needed is that one partner or both develops sustained anger towards the other. This is the great value of anger in marriage. It gives us accurate and clear notice that something needs to be adjusted and corrected. So it's a signal. It's kind of like something's going on here. Something's going on here. Like we have to listen to our bodies. And so when we're either kind of, because our bodies will tell us, we know, like there's something going on inside. Okay. So anger can be this signal that something needs to be fixed. Okay. And then the minor repairs are usually easy to deal with, especially if we kind of deal with it, as it rises. But then the major repairs require more time and effort. And he uses the example of, a car that's, or even a house, you could use anything that needs maintenance. Okay, so, my car is making this funny noise and I just kind of, whatever, it's not a big deal. And then it kind of gets a little bit worse. And I think, it's still not very bad. And,
I don't want to invest the money to.
I don't want to put in the time and the energy. I'll do it, in a couple of weeks, I'll have a bit more time. And by then it's like screeching.
You're going to have a major breakdown.
Right. Or like it's been squealing and then all of a sudden the belt breaks. Right. And you're right. So, so it would have been much easier if you had dealt with it when it first just started making a small noise. And same thing in our marriages. But we, especially think, oh, it's not that big a deal. I'm probably just overreacting, whatever. I'll deal with it later. It was a jerky thing for him to say or whatever. But it's, okay. So it's saying the first step really is to choose a time and a place where you're not going to be interrupted, and then share your hurt feelings. Okay. So, and then you take the next step, which is to try to establish clearly what the issue really is. Okay. So you're going to begin by sharing, I'm hurt, right? I experienced this hurt. And then just a sec here. Then begin by sharing your hurt feelings without any reference to the issue that caused them. At this level, you can identify with each other. Okay, so you're not making any accusations, but then you're trying to establish clearly what the issue really is and just keep strictly to the facts. Okay, so he uses an example here. So don't bring in other issues at this point. Just keep strictly to the facts, because it's easy to bring in a whole bunch of things, right? Like, for instance, this guy says, John says to Mary, okay, you're trying to make me over. I'm not going to stand for that. It isn't just the way I leave my clothes around. You put me down in other ways too. I've been noticing this lately. In fact, come to think of it, you've been acting this way ever since we got married. You always seize an opportunity to make me seem less capable than you are. You even did it sometimes before we were married. I think you got this habit from your mother. You noticed how she treats your dad. Okay, you're bringing in all these different issues. And it's kind of like,
go back to Adam and Eve.
Yeah. So when you've got this whole, catalog, you've got just complaint after complaint. Then by then she's really ticked off because like you just brought up all these different things and you're making accusations. So then she's going to be getting angry the more things that you're adding in there.
Defensive.
And then and then all of a sudden it's ammunition and time to fire back. So we do have to try and stick to, try and stick to what the issue really is. Okay. And then there's a few other practical proposals here. So the first one is to cool down. That's why you have like 24 hours in which to do it. And you might be able to say something right away, like, oh, like especially if it's just the two of you, and you go, well, whatever. I'm never good with examples. You're better. Give me an example.
Well,
about something.
I was embarrassed when you talked about whatever,
Okay.
in front of our friends.
Okay.
And it made me look like a fool.
Okay. So let's say that's the issue. We already used that one. That's okay.
I couldn't think of anything else.
Okay, that's all right. Okay. So then you could just say it would be a little bit afterwards because you wouldn't be saying it in front of your friends, but you're trying to cool down. They were talking about in this book about how even in kindergarten, if there's an argument, one method was like you just get the kids to go and lay down in this darker room, like maybe the blinds are down or something. They have to lay down on their little mats, and so it's cool. And they because your body is just relaxing, and then you go, okay, now you guys can work it out. And at that point, they don't even want to anymore because they're all relaxed and they can just kind of laugh it off. So part of it is just getting to a state of being relaxed, and so you don't want to deal with it if you're quite emotional and really ticked, right? And sometimes just even touching the other person, but you don't want to be mad, just clenching. But you can kind of calm yourself and the other one down. Okay. And then the second thing, so after cooling down, then you want to keep cool. Okay. Agree that you're not going to attack or blame or provoke the other person, and using I messages, which we've talked about before. So you're looking together for the basic difference between you. So you're trying to figure out what is it like we've got a different perspective on this. Like in this case, we've got a different perspective. I just think, oh, that wasn't a big deal. I just said that. But you're saying, no, it hurt my feelings and I felt put down I felt embarrassed in front of my friends. Okay, so you try to define the disagreement. So I'm saying, in this case, I'm saying, well, okay, you'd like it if okay, he's here. I'll use his example. Okay, so John would like to do it this way, but Mary would prefer to do it that way. They're both sincere about where they stand, and they're also eager to find a way of coping that can be acceptable to both of them, so that they can join in a united policy. This doesn't need to be an imprecise detail, but you're trying to identify, right, where you're differing on your interpretation. And then sometimes this might be if it's more like bigger issues, but it can even be for a small one to prepare, like to sit down and write something. So you're putting the other person's point of view down. So I would, like in this case, I would sit down and I would say, okay, you're hurt because I said this and this. And to you, that was a bit of a put down and you felt embarrassed in front of this person.
Our friends.
Right. And then you would say, you don't think this is much of a big deal, and you think that they didn't even notice, and you think that I'm overreacting. And then we come back and prepare, like we both read our statements to each other, and then you go, yeah, you got it. And then you say, well, yeah, but you missed this. Yeah. So you kind of correct each other. Okay. And then you correct them and share them with each other. And then you can say, okay, well, let's list what are some options out of this? I want to think of a different example because that's not really a really good example for this. Like, what would we be angry about, or what would a couple? I'm just trying to think.
Or how about you guys? What are things that couples differ about and they may maybe get mad about? Somebody can either put it in the chat or speak. Either way. Or what are issues that you guys differ on?
Yeah, if you can think of one. Oh, Maureen's coming up with one, maybe.
Maybe.
Or maybe not. Are you guys still there? Okay, there we go. Okay.
I was going
okay, finances,
is always, finances is always or differences in raising the children, I guess.
Yeah. So, okay. And I saw, Stephen and Celine just put that one down. And then Maureen said finances. Okay, well, let's look just for a moment then at
or buying stuff for the kids.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, those are all good examples.
Like one parent generally likes to spend more than the other one does, and that can cause issues.
Yeah. So that's true. Both of those are big ones. Like kids and money are both big ones, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So why don't you go and you can lay out the differences between. You don't want to.
No. I mean, I'm just trying to.
Okay, let's say, I come from a family where we always had like huge, like tons of presents and stuff like that at Christmas, and so I think we should spend, our budget should be like $2,000 or something for Christmas, and you're thinking,
but we can't afford that.
Hey, sweetheart, maybe $100. No, and so, and then we're getting angry, and I'm, so then basically what he says, or like, or you're deciding, well, I really think that we need to homeschool, and you're thinking, absolutely not. Like, there's no way that, the kids need to stay in the school. We're going to fail at this, there's lots of things, or I know one time, one of the big ones that now I'm just starting to go with a whole bunch of examples, but like, when we bought a new car, which was a used car, but still. And so Paul really wanted to put more money into it and get one that was quite a bit newer. And I wanted to get kind of an older one.
Right. And so we had to talk it out, because my concern was I didn't want to immediately be putting money into repairs. Right. And Carol just didn't want to lay out, more cash. Because
I don't really care what a car's like. And right. So as long as it goes. So we had to talk back and forth. But then we realized we did come to a common, like we went back and forth quite a bit. That's even like 3 years ago when we were doing that. It's probably time to get a new car, but we can argue it out again. And so, so sometimes it's a process and it can't all be done. Oh, your internet connection is unstable. Uh-oh.
We're okay.
Okay. Maureen's laughing. Okay. So So what we need to do is list the different options. So let's say we're talking about the schooling. Okay, so what we could do then is we could say, well, we could just keep the kids in school. We could try to keep better tabs on things. That would be one option. We could just jump into it and say we're going to homeschool, and we're going to, we'll do some research, and we'll try, and some of the people that we know who are doing it, we'll get them to help. We're going to jump into this, or maybe, and then we could list, and maybe we could move where that we've heard there's a really awesome school, or we could do something in between. We could say, okay, we're just going to try it this year up until Christmas or something. Right. Let's just give it a go. Anyway, you can start listing out all these different options, and then there'll be some that are completely outrageous and say no way. But then you just come together and you choose the option where you can reach kind of that maximum agreement over. Right. So like we finally did come down to recognizing with the car thing that both of us really were trying to save money. I was just trying to, I don't want to lay out, a whole bunch of money, because sometimes older cars are just as good as newer ones. Paul's trying to save money because he doesn't want to be putting money into an old car, right away. And we're both actually have the same, we wanted really good mileage, and so we had certain things in common. So you look at the things, obviously, hopefully you both really love the kids, and so you want what's best for the kids. So you have to kind of talk through what is best for the kids and why, because
maybe I'm just thinking we need to talk more specifically about the forgiveness.
Sure,
piece.
Let's jump into that,
because until that happens, it can be pretty hard to work through, in a logical, rational way, our differences. So how do we move from the anger to forgiveness?
Okay. And so I'm not sure if we've shared this with you, but not everyone would have heard it anyways. One of the things that we use in our coaching is a forgiveness exercise that, I don't know if it was first developed by Greg and Julie Alexander, but they're the ones who shared it with us. And it is very good, because what it does is it helps me to focus on my contributions. Okay, let's say, going back to the couple that's really got this undercurrent of anger, and it's making our marriage pretty miserable, and thus it's making our kids pretty miserable. And it's just not, it's not happy. I mean, and it's, we might be able to enjoy each other once in a while, but most of the time there's this undercurrent. And so it just always, anger is close to the surface.
Tension.
Okay. So this process is, it's basically, it's an examination of conscience, and it's done individually. So if Paul and I were doing it, I would be examining my conscience on how have I harmed this marriage. It's kind of like coming to a place. Actually, we've even talked about it as calling it the clean slate. So, so I start examining what I've contributed to the harming of our marriage, and I just say I've harmed our marriage, or I've harmed you, my spouse, in all of these ways. And I start examining from even when we first met, and through our dating, through our courting, through our engagement, through our early marriage, all the way through. And I'm really examining and saying, okay, what have I done that has contributed to the anger that I'm feeling now, to any division that we have, to misery, I'm misery in our marriage. What have I contributed? And Paul would be doing the same thing. And then
you mean what you contributed?
No, you would be doing, you'd be examining yourself. And then we both go to the sacrament of reconciliation. Before we go to each other, we go to a priest, and we confess that I've contributed in a lot of ways to not a healthy marriage. And these are the things that I have done. And so I've harmed my husband, I've harmed our marriage, I have harmed God. I mean, I've harmed my relationship with God, because I've been sinning. Even maybe they're all venial sins, but they've somehow, if something damages a relationship, whether it's a relationship with God or with another person, or even towards myself, if I've damaged a relationship, that's a venial sin. I mean, a venial sin.
And it can be mortal.
Yes, well, for sure. Yeah. I mean, probably the first one that comes to mind is an affair or something.
Yeah.
It's like a mortal.
On the gravity and also your intent and so forth.
And sometimes even just like, or if someone has a habit of flirting, but they're flirting a lot, I mean, that is an unfaithfulness. Or pornography is also another form of unfaithfulness. So whatever things that I have done to harm our relationship, to harm our marriage, because we see the marriage as a separate entity. So there's Paul, there's myself, there's our relationship, and there's God. Okay, so God, who loves Paul and who loves me, and who actually even loves our marriage, right? Like, and wants our marriage to be a true sign of his love in the world, because that's what marriage is for.
And a sign of the love that Christ has for the church.
Yeah. So this indissoluble bond, and life-giving bond and faithful bond, this is the best picture that we have of who God is, because God is love. And marriage, that's why Satan attacks marriage so hard, and especially Christian couples. He attacks because he hates marriage, because it shows who God is, because there's this indissoluble, faithful, total life-giving love that God has for all of his creation. And that's marriage best imitates that.
So we each come up with our list.
Right.
And we go to the priest, we confess our sins.
Individually.
We get our penance, we get absolution. And then we come to each other.
Yeah.
And the man goes first and he says, honey, I'm sorry for all of these ways that I have harmed you or harmed our relationship. And you list them all. And she says, I forgive you for all that, but you forgot this and this and this.
That really harmed me.
That harmed me. Okay. If in fact I did miss anything. And then I admit to that and say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't remember that. And I'm sorry for these things. And then she forgives me. And then she goes through her list and says, Paul, I'm sorry that I've harmed our marriage. I've harmed you in these ways. And then I say, I forgive you. And it's important to say, I forgive you. And
not just, oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
No big deal.
I forgive you. And then I have the opportunity to say, well, you forgot about this, and to share that. And then she says, okay, I'm sorry for that too. And what that does, of course, is it puts you on, it creates a clean slate, right? So you're right with God, and now you're right with each other. And it really does lower the animosity, because both parties have admitted where they failed. Both parties have, by the grace of God, forgiven each other. And then from that moment on, you just keep short accounts, right? So when those little pinches come, then you don't let it build up. And you say, ouch, that kind of hurt. And you deal with it within 24 hours, and you'll find that you begin to enjoy each other's company more and more again, and that there's less tension in the home, and you can be best friends again.
Yeah, because these he talks about like act on the pinch. So when you feel that pinch, like again, it's really good to go through the clean slate exercise, because you're dealing with a whole bunch of stuff there, and you do need the help of a priest. Well, you need the help of God, especially. You could do it without a priest if you're Protestant and you don't go to confession, whatever. But it's great to actually receive that absolution, that forgiveness from God, right? Because it helps, and it helps me have the right attitude. It helps me be humble and recognize, oh, it's not all his fault. Oh, wow, some of that's me. I've been thinking all along that everything in the marriage that's been going wrong is all his fault. If he would just change, we would have this awesome marriage. And so then I'm recognizing, okay, I have done a lot of things here and that have hurt. And so we both come into the marriage that, some people say that, or I've read some things that where they think that selfishness is the biggest problem in marriage. And it is huge, but it's also pride. And I almost think pride is more, because if I'm really proud and I just think, oh, it's all him, then I'm not going to be working on it. It's going to just be, yeah. So we act on the pinch, when there's that little twinge and we feel hurt or put down or demeaned or whatever. And to recognize that it is worth mentioning. We don't, and we don't have to harshly deal with it and really critically deal with it, but gently, with this honest desire to kind of keep short accounts with each other. And then those small little angers don't have the chance to accumulate, right?
And fester.
Yeah. And so, but you kind of make a rule with each other that we're going to share a pinch when it comes within 24 hours. Okay. So that, and then also I think from that point too, you can kind of start setting some goals, like once you're working on the same team and you're dealing with this, like you've gone through the forgiveness exercise and you've kind of laid it all out, and you're both going to be more at a place of humility then, because you're recognizing, what
it's not all her fault.
Yeah. And so the anger dissipates because you're seeing, oh, it's not just him, it's me too. So if I'm going to be angry, I'd have to be just angry at myself because I've just looked at all these things that I've done. And then from that point on, when you've done that clean slate thing, then it's sort of like having a whole tune-up or like a whole, of the engine, like the car, like you've had everything like all fixed up or a big renovation in the house, whatever. Okay. So you've dealt with it. So you're not going to have to do as much maintenance, but you still have to do some.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also once you have dealt with the forgiveness, it's a lot easier to pray together too.
Well, and the marital embrace, I mean, to just want to be intimate with each other.
That's right.
You want to be intimate with God. You want to be intimate with each other, because now you actually like each other and you recognize, oh boy, he's had to kind of forgive me for a lot of things. Like I've really contributed some really kind of negative things to this marriage. And so that humility actually can tend towards intimacy, both in the ability to pray with each other and the ability to, enjoy each other in the marital bed. And, then it's not this harsh, critical, festering anger that's there, which kind of doesn't make you want to pray together or have sex together. I mean, it doesn't, it's like, I'll sleep in this room, thank you very much, and you go in yours. So yeah. So then you're acting together. That's the goal. This is kind of a process of reconciliation with God and with each other. And so it's taking the anger, which maybe is huge at the beginning of the process, but by the time I've examined myself and he's examined himself, and we've gone to God through the priest and we've received forgiveness, and we've shared humbly with each other. Oh, bye, Maureen. She has to go. Okay, take care. She says, God bless everyone. Okay. Bye. So, yeah, bye-bye, sweetie. So then the major repair has been done, and then we can start dealing with the minor repairs. So actually, we're kind of close to the end here. So I'm just kind of thinking that maybe we should just get a little bit of feedback. Oh, yeah. We have like, we usually go till 5:10 after. But
we do apologize for all the technical stuff at the beginning.
Yeah,
there was really nothing we could do about
it. But just, I guess just a final couple closing words, and then we'll hear what you guys have to say. But that if we're going to have a loving relationship, it is going to take some time. It's going to take some skill. It's going to take some patience with myself and with my spouse. And it's going to take some help from God, some grace from God. But we can move from even intense anger with each other through reconciliation. So, with God, and then reconciliation with each other. And then we just kind of pay attention to those pinches and we can move forward. I don't know. Was any of this helpful? And does anybody have anything to add?
And do that. There. Oops. Get back in here. I just found it. I was quite interesting. A while back, you put you were stating that anger was a secondary emotion, and I found that quite interesting. What could be some other primary emotions then that anger is hiding?
Well, yeah, I mean, the two most common are hurt and fear, and
so like fear of humiliation. We were talking that example, or fear of abandonment, or fear of like fear of looking like a fool in front of my friends. That was one thing. Or fear of well, like the homeschooling example might be more like if they're fear of maybe losing control over my kids, or fear of handing over my children to the public system, if I think the public system, and fear also that my husband isn't on the same page as me. And so that means we're going to mess up our kids. Like there can be fear there. There can be fear of loss. Like let's say my husband's flirting with people, then I've got anger over that, because, and justly so, because that's a form of unfaithfulness, even though it's, and so, or that can also obviously be hurt, because I feel very hurt because he's paying attention to another woman and he should be paying just attention to me, right? So there's fear and hurt, and then all of a sudden that can easily move into anger. And so fear and loss, or fear and hurt, but what else? It's a lot of times it's those two.
An awareness of injustice.
Yeah. So if like that was totally unfair that guy ripped us off, and that's unjust, and I'm going to be mad. Or it's totally unfair that guy just cut me off on the highway. I mean, that's not a marriage one, but that's unless it was your husband driving. Like, why'd you cut me over? A lot of times it's fear or hurt.
Yeah, I'm not sure what
There might be some other ones.
other emotions. What do you guys?
Anybody else?
Sense? What other emotions can underlie anger?
I think especially those, but there might be some other ones too.
Any others?
Like the injustice. Yeah. And
Well, thank you.
yeah.
Oh, how about jealousy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good
Jealousy.
one. I mean, yeah. Because then it's like, yeah, I'm jealous and I'm mad. You're right. That leads to,
That leads to anger.
Yeah. So I think, and even if we're thinking about like our marriage, our own personal marriage, or other marriages that we see that have really been struggling or that have fallen apart, you can see, like when you get back to it, even before the anger, you see, or if you dig down deep, you see a lot of times that it's fear, or it's embarrassment, or it's hurt, or it can be jealousy, any of those things. But so anger is a response to one of those deeper. Yeah, it is. It's so. I guess it isn't just the automatic thing, but sometimes it can be pretty instantaneous. Like I'm driving down and somebody cuts me off and it's like, but I guess, okay, so what's the, that's just an injustice one. That's just wrong.
Well, yeah, or it could be,
fear of being, that I almost hit him.
Because you almost got hit. Yeah.
And it would have, and so then I'm really mad.
And it can be kind of like a form of self-defense too, right?
Yeah. And if somebody's attacking me, like verbally or through
Physically.
email or through Facebook, which is happening a lot these days, and then it's like, I'm just angry because there's a lot of anger in the social media these days, isn't there? And people kind of are just putting out what their perspective, and then they're expecting everybody to just say, oh yeah, you're right. Well, they have a different perspective. And so then you get these fights going, and then everyone's kind of trying to, it's kind of a mess, because it's not as natural as sitting down with somebody and talking through it. And then you've got all this audience that's kind of looking at it and it's not actually that healthy sometimes. But in a marriage, hopefully you're not primarily communicating through social media. Anybody else have a comment? Anything else? Or
Got it.
No, if not, we can wrap it up if we're done for tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next week again. And I don't anticipate having the technical problems, but it was something with our computer. It wasn't actually the internet, because we were getting our internet on our phones, so it was something with, I don't know what it was. So anyway, but we'll close with prayer. And just encouragement for all of us to just, try and keep, when we feel a pinch, and just not only with our spouse, but also with other people,
just to try to, and again, you don't do it right in a moment of anger, but to try to keep the accounts short, and so that they don't build up. Like sometimes in family systems, sometimes it can just build up. Nobody says anything for years. And then all of a sudden it's a
Big blow up. Yeah.
right. And all this stuff comes out and it's like, oh my goodness, like it would have been nice to know if this, right, if these little pinches were happening all the way through instead of having this big major thing, right? So it is a good idea to try and listen to our bodies, listen to our anger, which can be, again, be a gift that's just saying there's something to be dealt with here.
Okay.
So
Should we just close with Our Father?
sure.
Okay. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, God
and
bless
just
you.
wait, one more thought before, just as we just prayed, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. So that's a good note to end on, just to think, God, I'm asking you to forgive me in the same way that I'm forgiving other people, right? That's what I just prayed.
Yeah.
So we need to remember to very generously forgive others, whether it's your spouse or whether it's, your sister or whatever, whoever it is, or your boss. Like, we should be generous in our forgiveness because we want God to be generous in forgiving us, right?
That's right.
So anyways, good to see you guys, and we'll see you next Tuesday, and have a wonderful week. And yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right. Bye now.
God bless.
See ya.
Take care, you guys.